I think 45,000 civil servants currently on benefits. A lot of them in DWP were the people that are actually like processing benefits claims themselves, having to use the system that they work for because they're so underpaid.
We need you to raise our pay.
Tell me why you're out striking today.
Obviously, cost of living at the moment is just absolutely insane. My rent this week has gone up by 30%. The landlord's no negotiation there whatsoever. I think everyone across London, across the whole UK is facing the same thing. At the same time, what we've been offered in the past 2 years, a 2% pay rise, a freeze the year before, 1% if we're lucky for the past 10 years. Just frankly, the lifestyle that you'd expect to live off a supposedly decent civil service job just doesn't exist on current pay.
It's got to a point where it's unsustainable for us to live, especially in London. The cost of living's insane. People's rents are going up 20-30%, and we've got a 2% pay rise, so do the maths, it's not working.
It's also about the fact that our kind of rights around striking are being looked at again. There's legislation going through, and so I think it's more important than ever to kind of take the opportunity to strike now.
I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that you would be out striking for better pay.
Well, I think the perception is of the people at the top, frankly. I think that the perception of civil servants is the kind of Sir Humphrey, and that's the people at the top, and they are earning a lot of money. But most civil servants are not earning anything like that. Most civil servants are earning something around £25,000.
I think it's 1 in 8 civil servants is using food banks currently, and I think 45,000 civil servants currently on benefits. A lot of them in DWP were the people that are actually processing benefits claims themselves, having to use the system that they work for because they're so underpaid. There's people on the national minimum wage.
Would you say that cost of living is something that's really impacted you and your fellow colleagues' lives?
Absolutely. I don't think that there's anybody in the country that's not impacted by the cost of living, but I of course have first-hand experience with my colleagues. When I was kind of building for the ballot, I was of course calling lots of members and talking to them, and the amount of people that I was speaking to who were basically crying to me on the phone and just saying, I don't know how I'm going to survive. I don't know if I'm going to make rent. I don't know how I'm going to feed my children. What if something happens and the car goes, or, we suddenly all need new shoes or something like that. It's, there is no fat left to trim in most people's lives.
Even very senior civil servants or the more senior civil servants cannot afford to live in London in the lifestyle that they would want. So you have to be at the very top to be able to think about buying a house. So these jobs that used to be at the same level as a GP or even an MP salary have now depreciated so much that people have to live in different places. People can't afford to live, basically, can't afford to have kids. It's going from respected traditional job to something that isn't, frankly, and the public will suffer from that as the quality of the work declines, as we're overworked and as we're asked to do increasingly more with less and with less money.
And people are leaving civil service because they can't afford to stay in it. That's something that we've noticed a lot at work, is that people just keep having to resign and take different jobs that they would rather stick in the work that they really enjoy and feel like they're doing something good, but they can't afford to keep doing that job.
Have you ever reconsidered where you're working because of this?
It's not a secret that if we worked in the private sector, we could probably get much higher wages. And that is of course true, but people need public sector workers. The country would not run with public sector workers. And as I say, we have all chosen to be public servants because we care. And because we want to serve. And it would break my heart to have to go into private industry. I don't want to do that. It's really difficult. I'm sure that, there are many, many civil servants that are currently thinking about whether they should go into a different industry.
Most people have to be graduates now to get a job in the civil service, unless you're doing an apprenticeship. There are very few ways in without doing a degree and getting into tens of thousands of pounds of debt and then having to pay that off for the rest of your life, basically, because we don't earn enough to ever pay that money off.
If you want to succeed in civil service, you have to be based in London. There's been efforts to move things out, but the frank reality is, if you want to work in a policy job close to ministers, you have to be around here. It's increasingly unsustainable, unaffordable to live here on a civil service pay. I wouldn't like to, because I think the reason why I am civil servant, the things I like about it still remain true. But long term, would have to think, is it sustainable for me to stay in this career when I'm not sort of able to live like a reasonable life with the quality of life that I expect to have.
The sad thing is that we don't want more money than the private sector or more money than a doctor. We just want enough money to be respected, basically. And I don't think that's a big ask.